We don't even have an intro for One Piece at a Time, do we?
We really don't. And I don't really even have like a funny bit to transition into. So, when last we left off, we were in jail.
I mean, I feel like that's the intro. So, when last we left off.
When last we left off, we were in jail. Or maybe just getting to it. We've reached the prison. Impel down. And I seem to remember you bullying me because that's not what it was called. But is it Impel down?
It is Impel down.
Okay. I don't remember what the other thing that I thought it was, but you definitely shouldn't correct me because if I learn the other name, then I'm going to forget Impel down. Anyway.
Yeah. I don't even remember.
Impel down's not a lot. I'm a level with you. We're reintroduced to a bunch of characters that are personal favorites of mine, and I guess everybody else, otherwise they wouldn't be here. But for the most part, Luffy's just sort of descending into a prison hell after having been smuggled into it by Mrs. Hancock. And, yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, we're introduced to the idea that, these jailers are super powerful, but also, like, we kind of just watch them roll over. Like, we're introduced to a horny BDSM jailer who's the only one that I left the arc still not liking. Like,
yeah, I mean, I feel like she's like not even a character.
She's really not. She's just there to moan,
just
and
be
have
weird.
Her tits out.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate,
and a very interesting comedic choice for sure.
Comedic choice. I like the head jailer as a character a lot more than I thought I would.
Magellan.
He is still definitely dressed as a fascist orangutan. Like, there's no real getting around it, you know?
Yeah, no, he looks interesting.
But, you know, he seems to have at least a sense of right and wrong, which we learn because we learn a little bit about the guy who had the job before him. But Luffy fights his way down after having run into Bon Clay and Mr. 3 and Buggy. And I'm so glad to have Buggy back. I forgot how much I liked Bon Clay as a kid. Looking back on it, Bon Clay, especially in his first trip around the sun, was definitely handled very disrespectfully. As nature of, like, just sort of being a comedy gender queer character, and he's done a lot more credit here. Yeah. Spoiler alerts, he dies, and that doesn't seem like it needed to happen.
I mean, I don't know if he's actually dead. We still don't know if he's actually dead to this day. I mean, everyone loves Bon Clay specifically because of Impel Down. And I will say that, like, I feel like a lot of the characters that, you know, come out of Impel Down with Luffy are fantastic during, like, Marineford, like, during the Paramount War. And, like, that's kind of why Impel Down works. Because, like, I feel like Impel Down is part of the same arc, you know. It is the beginning of the war.
It wasn't given its own title on the spines.
Yeah.
And, like, so, like, as far as the events that happen at Impel Down, Luffy fights his way down, then he fights his way back up. Like, that's what happens. Because he hits ground, he hits the bottom level, he discovers that Ace has already been taken out to go stand at Marineford before his execution. And then he, at that time, recruits Crocodile, Jinbei, and Ivankov to help him fight out. And Ivankov, I was saying in the last episode, and I know this only because we had just listened to it, that I was excited to meet him. And I do love him still so much. I love him a bunch. I still don't know if he's tasteful. Well, actually, let me rephrase. He's not tasteful. I still don't know if he is problematic. And I go back and forth on it. There is a bit where it's hard confirmed that every one of his followers in the prison, he had gender swapped them. And there's not a whole lot of confirmation as to whether or not they wanted to be. So there may or may not have been an entire nation of forcibly gender reassigned individuals. But you know what? If you don't think about it too hard, otherwise a great character.
I mean, yeah, it's a very interesting aspect to that part of the story. I mean, like, even just Ivankov, like, you know where Ivankov is from yet?
Kama Land.
Yeah, so that's the place that Sanji ended up on the pre-time skip, or on post, like during the time skip.
Yeah, we see him interact with Sanji later.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know if you saw that yet, but yeah, I mean, it's like, I feel like there's a lot surrounding that and his island that is kind of problematic. I feel like
I'm sure
Ivankov,
if we spend any amount of time there, I'm going to have opinions.
Yeah, Ivankov as a character, though, I feel like isn't too bad. The fact that Ivankov does just so happen to have the hormone fruit is a little questionable, but
it's also not what hormones do.
Yeah.
Ivankov basically has flesh sculpting powers by altering your hormone balance. And what does and doesn't count as a hormone is kind of like being able to inject Luffy with the healing juice and to kickstart his own metabolism and like healing, yeah, fair enough. You know, like that's not too science fiction-y. But to just keep changing the size of your head,
yeah,
like just so that it can be different in each panel, that's not entirely, I think, a hormonal thing.
Well, I mean, hormones do control the growth of the human body, right?
Yeah, but
I mean, like, if you have complete control over that,
but your bones stop growing after a certain point.
Well, I know, but if you say you can like force your body to grow through hormones to whatever shape you want without feeling pain, I guess, right? You could just
the
do that.
Shape isn't what hormones are in control of, though.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. Well, that's what I was curious about. Like, you couldn't shift the size of your bones.
I do like how Oda confirmed that the death wink. So Ivankov winks at you real hard, and like an explosion happens, and he hard confirmed in question corner that it's not hockey. It's just the power of the wink and the eyelashes closing.
That's
which
just
is why
strong.
he grows
it just
his
closes
head.
with that much force.
Yeah, which is why it gets stronger the bigger he makes his head, because there's more eyelash to close. I liked that. I actually really did.
Yeah.
Ivankov is part of the Revolutionary Army, we find out. And then we just fight our way out of the jail. Now, the only things that I really don't care too terribly much about for Impel Down are horny BDSM jailer and Blackbeard shows up, which in and of itself is fine. I don't give a shit. He doesn't really interfere with with like Luffy and his shenaniganery.
Doesn't interfere with the One Piece.
Oh, he's going to sooner or later.
Yeah.
And so like that's whatever. He shows up to get people out of prison / to set it up so Impel Down has the control room that opens the gates of justice that lets people go in and out of Marineford. So we find out later that he's really there to set it up so that he can get access to Marineford. And that's why he became one of the 7 warlords, is to be able to do that. But what I don't like is he recruits prisoners to his crew at this point. And they're not just like some nobodies. Well, okay, most of them are some nobodies that we don't have any context for. We have context for one of them at this point. It's the former head jailer. And I don't like Blackbeard having more crew because we still haven't seen what the other members of his crew can do yet. You know? Like, why is he building the squad if we still haven't explored the old squad? Anyway.
I mean, I have an answer for that, but that would be pretty spoilery, I feel like.
I mean, unless he kills the old squad.
No.
But just like pacing wise, I would have liked to have seen the old like Blackbeard's like original 5 do something before we like made them 9.
I mean, you'll still get to see them do things, but it's kind of an ideological thing that's kind of like represented through the story, just like with the way that Blackbeard treats his crew as opposed to like how Luffy treats his crew and stuff like that.
I mean, I'm assuming it's utility and what have you, but
yeah. I mean, yeah.
Bon Clay sacrifices himself to let the crew to let the prisoners escape. And then we're on our way from misery to happiness today. I
don't know. I feel like it's kind of the opposite, from happiness to misery.
Everybody was pretty miserable in
well, yeah. So it's just misery to more misery, kind of.
Fair. So now we're on our way
for
to
everyone
Marine
involved
Ford to get Ace out. One thing that I will say about Impel Down that I liked that we spent time on is, with everything that's happened since Alabasta, it's easy to assume that some of those people were weaker than the fights that we had recently, right? Like, it's easy to assume that Crocodile was weaker than Enkidu, or whatever his name is, the Skypiea villain.
Oh, NL.
Oh, wow.
Inaru?
Not even close.
I mean, his Japanese is like Inaru. But yeah, NL. This is just such a stupid name in English, I feel like.
It's easy to assume that Crocodile is less than all of these people, or that like his like supporters were. But Impel Down does actually a pretty good job of setting up that like, no. These people still throw down. Like, Crocodile's no joke. He was a warlord after all. And so I actually genuinely really enjoyed that. I don't like that Buggy is still weak, and that's just because I want him to be strong, you know, but he does serve a very good job as a comic relief like character. The whole like journey that he goes on in Impel Down and the rest of the Paramount War is he's oopsed his way into having a crew of pirates stronger than him that he sprung from Impel Down, who just think that he's really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, that's his strength, right? Like, he kind of shares a similar strength to Luffy, only like kind of the opposite. Like, he attracts people because he's just stupidly charismatic, whereas like Luffy attracts people because he's like actually charismatic.
Except he doesn't, right? Like Buggy like had his original crew because that was just his crew. They were people that he was stronger than. This new crew, he's like he is their savior, right? He brings them from prison.
Yeah.
So they just assume that since he's with Luffy, since he's with Crocodile, since he went all the way down and came all the way back up, that he's strong. And then things keep happening that oops his way into appearing strong.
Which I feel like that's what makes it so funny.
I mean, it's a solid bit, don't get me wrong. But I want strong clowns in fiction. I want them weak in real life because if they're stronger than me, they're a threat. And clowns are terrifying. So, strong clowns in fiction only.
I mean, like, honestly, if Buggy was actually like a good combatant, like, he would be kind of disgusting, because his devil fruit would be like so good. If he like had all of the shit that the other characters have now, like all the hockey and all the fucking Conquerors hockey and shit.
Yeah, you slap some armament on that boy and his meat chunks flying at you
then, like,
in the chop tornado.
Like, he can basically utilize his fruit like a Logia fruit, where he could just like, because like later down the line there's a form of hockey called Future Sight, which like actually allows you to like straight up view up to like 10 seconds in the future through your perception hockey. Like, you're basically just like using your hockey to like guess what their next move is going to be. And like, there's a character who uses that to kind of make their devil fruit seem like a Logia fruit, where they can like use their body to like kind of absorb impacts, like a bullet will like just go right through him, but it's like because he's reacting rather than like his body's actually just moving out of the way like a Logia fruit.
He's option selecting and reading like a mofo.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But yeah, Bucky would be super dope if he was actually strong.
Buggy miniaturized his buggy ball, which I'd legitimately forgotten was a thing. A very powerful cannonball. He miniaturized it to like a marble sized.
Yeah.
But that's all that he's done.
Well, and like I was gonna say too that I mean there is it's not even really a theory, but it's like I do see it around occasionally where people are like, oh, but like what if Buggy was like actually really strong and he's just been hiding it this whole time?
He's not that smart.
I know, exactly. He's not smart enough, but it would be hilarious.
I would be here for
like
it.
in the final war, he just like reveals himself to be like as strong as Shanks and like no one knew it.
God, I love my dad. Yeah, no, Impel Down was kind of was a lot of nothing, but like I said, it did do a good job of like re-legitimizing Crocodile in some of the earlier fights. I don't have too much that I disliked about it, except, or at least I don't have too much that I disliked about it as like the actual chapters go. There was a lot of horny question corners, like a lot of them, and I don't remember what they were because it's been so long since I read Impel Down. But yeah, no, Oda doubled down on being horny in this period of One Piece.
It's been a long time since I read Impel Down too. Like, I remember all of the main points, but like, I was gonna say something too.
What about?
It was about Impel Down. Oh no, it was about Crocodile. Like, well. It wasn't even about Impel Down. It was mostly about like how like that's kind of the issue with the One Piece power scaling is that like because he didn't have Haki like introduced at the time when like Luffy fought Crocodile, like I feel like technically speaking Crocodile should have fucking known what Haki was and been like utilizing it because like he was a warlord.
Does Crocodile have his own Haki?
I mean, I'm assuming he really hasn't had a serious fight. Like he's kind of like in the background right now. Like he's going to be relevant in the end game, but like he's not yet. But like he hasn't had an actual fight since like Marineford, and he didn't even really fight in Marineford. So like we don't really know what he's capable of. Which I feel like I don't know. If he is really strong, I don't know how I'll feel about it because he doesn't really have a reason to have gotten stronger because his strength was kind of in the fact that he was like a crime boss and he had a really strong devil fruit.
I mean, yeah, really strong devil fruit.
But like you only become better with your devil fruit, like unless he's like awakened it, but also like we just don't know if he's been training. Like I would like it if Oda, confirmed to us that like, oh yeah, this man has been like actually trying to get stronger, because every time we see him he's just kind of doing some shit and like
I kind of don't want him to have a training arc.
Well, I don't think he needs a training arc, but just like a confirmation that he's actually been working to get stronger, because otherwise it's like I don't know why it would make sense that he would be absurdly stronger.
I mean, he is absurdly strong, right?
Yeah.
Like he doesn't do much in Paramount War, but like his fight with Luffy in Alabasta was long.
Exactly, but like the Kaido fight was basically the equivalent to the fight with Crocodile. It was like the same function where like Luffy loses and then comes back finally to win the day, but like that was more Haki oriented rather than devil fruit oriented. And it's like Crocodile, like yeah, he has a good devil fruit, but he kind of needs other shit to back that up nowadays, just with the way the power system functions. So
maybe there's something underneath that cutlass hook that he wears. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I am sick of running into like previous antagonists in chapter story starts.
Why are you sick of that?
Because I don't want them being around and sympathetic normal people when they're murderers.
I mean, I feel like they're not really sympathetic. They're just doing things.
And we want, like, some of them, like, especially, like, the ones that are, like, longer, like this is them being, like, heroes of their own little story, and I don't like it.
Yeah,
anyway.
That's fair.
We're sailing towards adventure. By that I mean to the execution grounds of Ace. Luffy and the crew get there, but barely. And by crew, I mean the new Kama land, which is all of Ivankov's followers, and the prisoners that Buggy sprung. Some shenanigans happen. They manage to get to it. At the same time... Actually, no. They get there late. Because... when we're at Marineford, Ace is on the execution platform, and most of the Navy is there. The Admiral, the 2 Vice Admirals, everyone that we've seen so far, and dozens of warships, characters that we haven't seen. There's an entire brigade of Navy giants, because they know. They're doing this on purpose. They know that if they publicly execute Ace, they're going to start some shit with Whitebeard. But they also know that if they can do that, that is a huge message, right? Well, all of a sudden, Whitebeard and a bajillion ships appear. Because they had their ships coded and just popped up from out of the water.
Was such a cool moment.
And up to this point, when we've been cutting back to Marineford, they were talking about how they hadn't seen Whitebeard, but that all of their reconnaissance ships had not returned. So Whitebeard was
just picking shit off,
And it turns out Whitebeard is so feared and so respected in the New World that in addition to his 16 division commanders, just a bunch of independent pirates are showing up because they're like, hell yeah, brother, we'll help you. And they're all super cool looking.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the first time that you really get a picture for how large Yonko crews are, because now we're actually getting kind of beyond the whole 7 warlord power system, you know. So yeah, that's.
And the warlords were very disappointing by the time we actually got introduced to all of them.
Yeah. When apparently the warlords were supposed to be the original, they were gonna be the main bad guys basically. There wasn't gonna be a Yonko before, the series just kind of kept going on forever.
That would have felt better because honestly, by the time we are introduced to our second warlord, it's all right, well, you're kind of the warlords could be 1v1'd by most of the captains from the New World.
Oh, easy. Yeah, no, the warlords are weak in comparison.
Yeah, warlords really only help are strong in this power level. Speaking of, what are they calling the New World? It's everything past Marineford?
Well, it's everything. So it's I don't have that little plush that I got, but the world of One Piece has the red line that goes around it this way, and then the Grand Line that goes around it this way.
Right.
And so the red line cuts off on both sides, and so the Grand Line is this part, or the first half of the Grand Line, which doesn't really have a name. I don't think they call it Paradise, but for some reason that's in my mind.
They do end up calling the first... So by the time that Paramount War is over, we have people calling the first part of the Grand Line Paradise just because of how much easier it was than the New World part.
Yeah, and
but
so
I was just
then,
wondering if there's a reason why the New World is the New World, or if it's just that other hemisphere.
They just call it the New World because it's much more vicious, because the Yonko just kind of have territory. It's every island in the New World is loyal to a particular Yonko. It's they own that part of the ocean. Like, the world government is kind of there, but it's like, this is a part of the sea that is just ruled by pirates, essentially.
Fair enough. The Paramount War itself is very fun. It's a very cool set of fights. We get very quickly introduced to Edward Newgate, or Whitebeard. We've seen him before, but we don't know anything about him, his motivations, or anything about him. The Paramount War does a very good job of, again, recontextualizing some of our earlier threats, like Smoker shows up. Chaser is my 4Kids lineage.
The 4Kids is creeping out.
Yeah, a little bit. Smoker shows up, and he's like a legitimate threat to Luffy. And that's kind of surprising, honestly, because especially by the time we get done with Alabasta, even, Smoker is kind of not, like, you feel like he's kind of nothing. Yeah. What I do like, though, is Luffy runs into Tashigi, and he's still, like, of the belief that they're bros. And so he's like, no, get out of the way. What are you doing here? It's kind of a nothing moment, but I do enjoy how it, like, still contextualizes, like, Luffy's perspective of everybody. Yeah, it's just more or less a lot of very cool fighting. We are introduced to some characters that may or may not show up later. We find out that Teddy Ursa, what's his name?
Kuma.
We find out that Kuma, so when Kuma booped the Straw Hats away from the archipelago, he had said something about how this would be the last time that he will see them. And it's because we find out that he is, like, agreed to be an experimental weapon for the world government. And the last step, and the step that was about to be undertaken before he booped him away from the archipelago, is, like, a removal of his, like, independent thought. So that's messed up. But also, we find out that he was also the leader of the Revolutionary Army.
He was a leader, yeah, because Dragon is the leader.
Ivankov calls him a leader.
Yeah.
He uses the L word.
Dude.
And so Ivankov's like, you know, warlord or not, why are you fighting me? And then we found out later through Del Flamingo that he's what I just said happened. And Ivankov kind of wonders to the audience what deal Kuma must have strucken to agree to this.
Dude, it's like so crazy because the shit is just now paying off.
God.
Like the stuff that we are currently in the middle of in the manga is all of Kuma's backstory. And this was like 15 years ago, bro, that this shit was coming out. Like, Oda really plays the long game.
And 15 years of things I care about less. Yeah, the actual, like, fight itself, like, is really just everybody really loving Ace and are here for the sake of Ace. And we get some, like, moments with Ace where... So we find out that he is the son of Goldie Roger. We don't know that because he's taken his mother's name. His mother, who?
I'm just kidding.
His mother. So the Navy was going around the island that they thought Gold Roger was getting busy with before his execution. And they were killing all of the children and the pregnant women who were at term or had just given birth. So anybody who could potentially be Roger's kid. Yikes.
Yeah.
But we find out, Forrest. Forrest.
What do you
Forrest,
need me to
I
hold
mentioned
you?
this on Monday, but Forrest, we find out that Ace's mother kept him in her womb for 20 months. She just decided, nah. Because that's a thing that women can do, is keep your child in your womb for an extra 11 months on pure willpower alone.
But that's totally possible, Jack. I'm just kidding.
She dies.
Don't you know people do that all the time?
I mean, at that point, I would just keep them there forever. Like, I don't want to bother with giving birth. It does kill her to do so, at least. But, like, it's the childbirth that kills her and not the human being that, at this point, is growing to... I digress.
Yeah, it's like the whole, like, Padme died after she gave birth to the twins for whatever reason, I guess.
I get, like, Padme dying because she did almost get force choked to death.
I guess, yeah.
Granted,
but
in a galaxy far, far away with,
think,
the Bacta tanks, there's no reason why childbirth should be lethal.
Even if her windpipe was broken, I think there would be technology to replace her windpipe.
Yes. She should have been fine. Ace's mother should not have been able to oopsie daisy the baby.
But it was hockey, actually. I'm just...
If it was armament womb hockey.
Because willpower is hockey, bro. And I'm just kidding.
Anyway.
I'm not trying to actually make it make sense.
So Ace had spent his entire life having most people in the world openly tell him he's a POS and that the world would be better if he never lived. Like, adults talking about how they want to torture him before they kill him so that his last words are being grateful that he's dying. Whew, yikes. So we find out over the course of the Paramount War that Ace, like, what he loved about the Whitebeard crew and why he doesn't want them to try to rescue him is he's so grateful to have people in his life that love him. And the entire crew love him. And so there's this very touching moment where he's like, stop trying to resist, because he is afraid of them getting hurt for his own mistakes. And so there's this moment where he sort of like makes his realizations and goes, all right, if I die, I die. I've come to peace with that. And if I get rescued, I get rescued. I've come to peace with that as well. He's like sort of accepted that acceptance. Yeah. The Paramount War has done a disservice by how Oda, I don't know if it's like how it's done in volume form versus if it was better in like weekly shonen chapters or if it's just this printing, but Oda does a lot of like 2/3 of a page, not like 1/2/3 picture, although he did do that and it's cut in such a way that you just can't see what's going on in the left half of that picture.
Yeah,
but like a lot of like action sequences, which are like awkwardly, like half of them are like, it splits the page in such a way that like the middle fold is interrupting these big epic drawings in a way that makes them unclear and unreadable.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that mentioned before. Like, I mean, I guess we never really talk about paneling on this podcast, but like, I mean, I feel like comic paneling in general is a very particular art form, and like doing it right. And I mean, I think Oda kind of has gone in phases of like doing really good paneling. And I do feel like whenever he gets to like really like a lot going on, like in wars like this, like his paneling definitely like kind of gets a little worse.
Like, he's trying to, like, add gravitas to, like, make the scenes bigger and what have you, but it's just...
But it's like he can't turn that into, like, a 2-page spread, probably, because of, like, how much he's trying to, like, fit into a chapter. Or, like, you know, just very particular weird things where, like, you know, he wants to fit in the story, but, like, you know... I feel like moving stuff to full 2 pages, you know, that takes up 2 pages of your serialization for the week, you know. And if you're trying to hit story beats and stuff, I can imagine it gets very hard.
Yeah, no, it's super awkward, is the end result of it all. We get introduced to some of the coolness of the admirals. We have a very nice moment where Garp basically goes, I am a Navy man, and I'm not going to ever not be that. But he does basically go, don't expect me to actually help to my fullest, which I think is nice because he does genuinely still care for Ace, because so he promised Roger that he'd take care of Ace, and so he did it by dropping Ace off actually first, because Ace is older than Luffy, at the same island that he dropped Luffy off. And so there's this moment where Garp is like one of the few people standing between Luffy and Ace, and Luffy just donks him, and it's pretty like shocking. And then one of the other admirals are like, all right, Garp, I get what you're doing. Basically, like, Garp hard confirmed isn't trying his hardest.
Was it the Fleet Admiral guy?
Maybe. Also, I found one of the instances of main canon just way too horny. BDSM jailer gets tied up, and yeah, no, it's just real bad. I'm going through my pictures now. Oh, there's a very funny bit, to backtrack, where Ivankov gets hit by like poison acid in the face, and turns out he's fine because it didn't hit him, it hit a thick layer of makeup. I liked that a lot. But like, it's basically hard confirmed that Garp didn't really try to stop Luffy.
Yeah, but like the guy with the big like afro, like the poofy hair out.
Buddha.
Yeah, him.
Yeah.
Was he the one that said that to Garp?
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's actually a pretty dope character. Like, he's kind of relevant. But he's like the fleet admiral is like basically the highest ranking like Navy member. And then there's like the 3 admirals under him, and Garp is just a vice admiral. But there's like actually a lot of vice admirals. I don't remember how many in total. But like I was also gonna say about 2-page spreads, like sometimes manga authors definitely don't think about 2-page spreads in the like when it comes to like printing.
This is one of those where like the fleet admiral and Garp are awkwardly on like a sliver on like the side of the page, which then makes what should have been a 2-page spread like a 1.5-page spread, and it just super awkwardly cuts the image. Oh, and then horny centerfold. Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of those.
Oh, and then this is another one where just like boom again, like for no good reason, like everybody's like running and charging. It's like, hey, look at all these cool characters. Okay, cool. I can't see at least 5 of them because they're in the crease.
But like, there's one of the most recent, I think it's like volume 40 of Berserk or something like that. There's like a 2-page spread where Guts is like walking down the center, and he's literally just in the crease of the book. Like he just like disappears into the crease, and it's just like, oh well, that's a great 2-page spread.
That's very funny, actually. But yeah, that's the only real issue that I have with the war itself. You find out that Whitebeard has the tremor fruit, which doesn't matter because, spoiler alerts, Whitebeard dies. But it does matter because somehow Blackbeard absorbs his devil fruit, and no one knows why. And people in universe are going, how has this happened? We've never seen this before. And somebody... the entire explanation as of now that we get is Blackbeard's always had a weird body. Maybe that's why he can do it. Okay. That's nothing. Shut the fuck up. That is nothing. Excuse.
But it's gonna be something down the.
Is his body weird? Right? Like,
I've
got double jointed thumbs. That's kind of weird. Is that indicative that I can absorb 2 devil fruits? Like, what constitutes a similar type of weird such that this is a reasonable explanation?
I know. I mean, I'm not going to defend that as a reasonable explanation. That was, I mean, that literally just raised more questions at the time, and we still don't know. The only thing we do know about Blackbeard is that apparently he never sleeps. And that's not something you learn until like Wano. So
I mean, that's fair. I don't necessarily need him to be sleeping.
But like that's kind of like like one of the things. Like we've kind of slowly learned that there's just weird things about Blackbeard that aren't explained yet. Probably going to be very relevant whenever we learn, but
fair enough. Luffy is the person who manages to fight his way to Ace, and it's a very powerful moment. He awakens his Emperor's Haki again in a way that like he's not doing it on purpose, and people are like, "Oh, when did you learn to do that?" And he's like, I do not know what you're talking about. Oh, this is a really great moment where Buggy gets his buggy ball deflected at him in just this panel.
Oh yeah, I think I have a picture of that panel.
This panel where he sees it coming but can't do anything about it.
You should send that to me so that I can like put it in the video so people can see it.
It's so powerful. I love it.
It's like one of the best reaction shots.
That's why I love my Bugster. We're introduced to members of like Whitebeard's crew that like can go toe to toe with like Mihawk even, and it's like, oh, let's go swordsman. More swordsmen. Whitebeard gets betrayed by one of his captains, who was promised safety for his crew in particular if he did it, as sort of like a way to like.
What do you mean Whitebeard?
Whitebeard, yeah.
Yeah.
As sort of like a way to like undermine the Whitebeard crew and like their solidarity, and also just weaken Whitebeard. But Whitebeard's like, "Aw, you dummy, I love you anyway," because Whitebeard has this thing about his pirates being his sons and them calling him Pops. We find out literally like 5 seconds before he dies that it's because he's always wanted a family. And I can't care about Whitebeard. I really can't. I can care about everybody else. Everybody else that's like part of his crew that we've learned about, I feel their like connection and what Whitebeard means to them, but like we're giving him back, like, the only, like, real character growing back panels are, like, 2 of them. And they're both, like, a page before the panel where he dies.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, like, literally, dude, we haven't even gotten to the other death.
Yeah. Marco's super cool. I like him.
Oh, I love Marco.
I thought he'd be lame looking at him on the cards, but Marco's super cool.
Luffy calls him Pineapple.
Fair enough. This is a picture where Ivankov's head is bigger than like the city-sized wall, so that he can see over it. I really like that. Luffy took a big old blast face full of poison in Impel Down, and Ivankov shot him full of healing juice, and it's like, this is going to take 2 weeks of him being in incredible pain. It took like 8 hours.
Because he's Luffy.
And then on the way out, if Luffy got beat up bad enough again that he's like, all right, I can jumpstart the healing, but like, this is taking a toll on your body.
Wait, does that happen on the way out of Impel Down? Because I remember that happens during the war.
Yeah, it happens twice. He's like, all right, like, you can do this. And then it happens during the war, and Ivankov goes like, no, dude, you're done. You've had it. And Luffy's like, fuck, I did. If I die while trying to save Ace, I can live with that.
Yeah.
But, right, and so Ivankov's like, all right, you stubborn asshole, and then goes, hey, if you go down again, like, even if you, like, lose consciousness, you are dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we just do it again.
Which, of course, that doesn't happen.
No. Would have been a much shorter series. But yeah, no. We also figure out that Hancock is 1 meter and 91 centimeters tall. We also find out her measurements. Yeah, you know, a horny Oda is bonus points for horny Oda. Ace gets sprung by Luffy, and they start kicking ass, and it's super cool, and I get really excited about it.
Something I was going to say, though, before we get to that is you're so lucky you didn't experience Marineford in the anime, because hot damn does it take Luffy a long goddamn time to get to Ace.
Oh, I imagine that's like
it's
10, 15 episodes.
The pacing is just atrocious when he's like running through the war. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I imagine that's miserable to get through. So Luffy gets Ace out. They start kicking ass, and then basically Whitebeard goes, all right, we're done. Outskis. And this guy, what's his name?
Akainu.
Akainu starts trash talking.
Akainu.
Magma Fister starts trash talking Whitebeard while Ace is close enough to turn back and try to start some shit. Ace turns back and tries to start some shit. And basically he's like, how dare you you say these things about my father figure? He's like 30,000 times the man that you are. And then he kicks Ace's ass, and then he goes to kill Luffy while Ace is like out of commission, and Ace hops in front of Luffy, and this panel happens. The biggest tragedy of the awkward 2/3 panel, because Ace is like, this is his death blow panel.
Oh, and like Luffy's in the crease.
Luffy's in the crease. It's really awkward. So Ace dies there. And if I didn't know that he died, I would have been so upset. I would have been so angry. But what's really cool is that like Garp is legitimately furious, like I was saying earlier, and like he basically gets up to start kicking Akainu's ass.
I love that shit.
And it takes like the fleet admiral to hold him down, and he's like, yeah, you better hold me down because I will kill him. And then Blackbeard shows up. Yeah, like there's a big band together to get everybody to run away. Trafalgar Law shows up randomly. I say randomly. Turns out that all of the pirates that we saw at the archipelago that are like sort of Luffy's cohort, they'd all been watching at the archipelago, and some of them got closer just to like see it from the outskirts from their own eyes. So Trafalgar Law's there, gets Luffy in his submarine because Luffy had gone like anger caught, like so unbelievably angry and like in pain watching Ace die that he had like
sad.
he like full disassociated, like white out, like but he's also in an incredible amount of physical trauma. So they take him, and the surgeon of death Trafalgar Law turns out to be an actual surgeon.
Yeah.
So he gives him medical attention in his submarine. Kobe objects to the Navy continuing the fight.
Oh, dude. I love this scene, too.
Kobe stands up to all of the admirals, and they're about to kill him for, like, not following orders. I will say, it should be noted, Tashigi and Smoker are both also like, this isn't right. We're just slaughtering people at this point. Kobe is about to get got, and then Shanks, my dad, shows up and basically goes like, you better listen to this boy. And it's like, hey man, if you want to keep this fight going, we can fight, but I'm here to stop this shit. In between what I just said and the last thing that we talked about, Whitebeard dies at the hands of Blackbeard and his new crew. And then
this is where the One Piece is real comes from.
Yeah, Whitebeard confirms that the One Piece is real, and basically goes
that the One Piece is weed,
and basically goes, nah, Teach, you're not the one who's going to shape this generation. You're not going to be the inheritor of the will of Roger. Luffy's recuperating on Amazon Lily. He has actually a very touching moment of just like blind rage and mourning, which is honestly pretty powerful. We get a look at Garp going back to the island that Luffy and Ace are from, and we also get a flashback to Luffy and Ace's childhood together, where we are and like this is like a volume worth of flashback, and we're introduced to a third brother by the name of Sabo. You could not pay me to care about Sabo. This late in the game, a flashback about Ace's life after Ace is dead. You cannot make me care about Sabo.
You
And
also
the
can't
reason
make
why
me
this
care
is-
about Ace dying.
I mean, yeah, but you're wrong. That's the difference. But like having Sabo's having the flashback be here and having it be so much about Sabo, because like the story that we talk about is like Sabo being a runaway orphan, but runaway by choice, moral objections, blah blah blah. We're taking the audience's desire to care about Ace and Luffy, and we're borrowing it to try to introduce this third brother who is so boring. I hate it.
That's fair. I mean, there's a lot of people that really don't like Sabo. I like Sabo.
I haven't seen him come back.
Yeah.
Which I know that he does because I've played Jump Force. But like, I haven't seen him come back, but I can't imagine he'll do anything that makes me care about him.
But I mean, so I have a hot take because a lot of people, they were very sad about Ace dying, and rightfully so. And like a lot of people also were very sad about Whitebeard dying, though Whitebeard was like hardly a character at that point. And like I do like Whitebeard in retrospect. Like Whitebeard is relevant, to just the history of the current era and all that. But like I genuinely believe that Ace's flashback like should have happened before Ace died.
1,000%.
Because it like would have built up so much more for like the death to actually happen. And like I agree that the fact that it like hyperfixates on Sabo is a little annoying, but I do feel like the whole flashback kind of only serves to literally get to like one scene where Ace is like, "Oh, I'm never gonna die, Luffy."
Yeah,
like that. Like
yeah.
it kind of sucks because it's like that's like the whole point of the flashback, and then Oda kind of just takes it and uses it to like introduce this whole new character.
Yep, we are of one mind there. One thing that I forgot to mention about my disliking that Teach recruited new cast members before we even saw his old cast members do anything. How he does this is he goes to like the worst offender level of Impel down, and he basically goes like, "All right, everybody in all of these cages, kill each other, and I'll free the person from each cage who's still alive." Which is cool. I really like Teach and I like Crocodile as villains because I like the way that they're so different from each other. Like I realized the other day that Crocodile is where my love of like gentleman mafia style villains look like. Or like that aesthetic comes from.
I mean, he was such a good villain, and like I think a lot about that because like Crocodile was such a good villain, and he didn't need a backstory. And like I kind of feel like a problem that Oda falls into, especially during the time skip, like post time skip, is that like all of the villains have to have like this deep backstory, and like usually, like honestly, that's kind of what made Kaido kind of lackluster. Was like he kind of hinted at this whole huge backstory for Kaido, never gave it to us. He gave us more of a backstory for Big Mom than he ever did for Kaido, and people were so upset when we didn't get a backstory for Kaido. But like, had he not just like laid that groundwork and like that desire, because like he never did that with Crocodile. Like we didn't care, we didn't have a desire to learn more about Crocodile because Crocodile was just a villain being villainous, and the setup for him was from like your like brief interactions with his organization, and then kind of him, and then finally getting the reveal of his identity. And it's like then when you look at a character like Kaido, it's like he was just Oda was just like, oh yeah, he's the strongest guy ever, and then, but he's also super important, and then he just never gave us the full backstory.
Well, it's the One Piece Super thing, right? Where nobody, like, I at least didn't care about Jiren's backstory. I didn't need to. I know that he has the Ultra Instinct and that he's super cool and powerful, and that he's a threat, and that's the only thing that I need to know about. But then we get his backstory, and it's so little and so generic that it really undermines him.
Yeah, God, I remember, just how disappointing that was. Also, you called it One Piece Super, which I think is really funny. Because I thought you were going to be talking about like post time skip as One Piece Super.
No. Post time skip is One Piece Z, obviously.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the woman who Garp left Luffy and Ace to be raised by is called Dan Dan.
Dan.
And Dan, when Garp shows up, starts beating the shit out of him. Because she raised those boys, and like, why did you let him do this? And Garp like understands, so he just lets her beat him up. Luffy. So we figure out where the crew is. We saw it in like chapter starts before, but we get like more of like where the crew is. Shaky may or may not have been killed by a Bartholomew Kuma robot, and I hope that's not what happened, but might be. Usopp is on an island, which is actually a big carnivorous plant full of very tasty things, so he's gotten fat as a joke. Nami is on an island of weather, like studying old men. They're all old, like Arthurian wizard men.
Just the way you said that, it was like weather studying old man, like the weather was studying old men.
Frankie is on the home island of Dr. Vegapunk, who's like the Navy's like technological wunderkind, and the Islanders are like, all right, there's a self-destruct button, don't press it. And Frankie, my perfect child,
Does he accidentally press it? I forget.
It has a Jolly Roger on it.
Oh yeah.
So he's like, this one. Blows the whole lab to sky high.
Yeah.
And there's a very wonderful moment where after he does it, there's a flashback to him asking the guys who told him about it. He's like, all right, so if I pressed it, hypothetically, would it be my fault? It's this. I want to go back and take a better picture of it, but it's this panel where he's like giving him like a thumbs up wink. He's like, it would be my fault. But the panel above it is just a big ol' explosion and him doing a thumbs up in the sky.
God, honestly.
I love Frankie. Frankie's so good.
I wish Frankie could be more a post time skip. Like I wish, dude, I just want. So like another thing that I saw people talking about recently was like why people like Marineford so much, because like Marineford and Impel Down are like definitely beloved as like two of the best One Piece arcs.
Because things happen.
Exactly.
Finally, things happen.
Well, yeah, and like so points that were being made were like it really is because there's like an actual sense of like danger and urgency and like stakes and stuff like that, and like that makes people so much more invested. And I mean, those are aspects of stories that are very important, like actually giving your audience a reason to care about why things are happening. And quite frankly, that's just like not something we've seen post time skip. And sometimes it's like, okay, like the whole point is the Straw Hats are way stronger now. We've seen them at their lowest when they've been their most defeated. Do we have to keep seeing that? But like at the same time, it would kind of be nice, because those are the moments that like give you character moments and like give you like interesting things happening. Because like Frankie's never had a moment where like he's been at like legitimately like death's door, or like super like he's had a heart-to-heart with a character because like things were straight up just going the worst they possibly could be. And like because of that, Frankie just has never really had super solid character moments yet.
That's fair.
I hope he does, but
I will say I would argue that we didn't have good moments pre-time skip either, because a lot of the islands in the pre-time skip feel like they're just hurdles for the sake of there being hurdles. Like a lot of the islands just sort of feel like we've stopped here to have conflict because we need conflict, and that they don't really lead to anything, especially with the context of having like all of these things that are happening in Marineford and Impel Down like are so divorced from most of those islands. And so I don't know, it feels like so much of this is just exists to extend itself. We get a cut to where Garp is basically retiring in all but Tidal, because he's like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And by that I mean the world government military commander-in-chief, Kong, is telling Buddha that Garp has essentially resigned, but he still retains his rank. I won't allow him to leave the service just yet. I need him to train the young officers of the next generation. Anyway. And then we figure out that as he was standing up to the Navy, Kobe got some hockey. He got the Heron hockey. After Luffy calmed down, so the Dark King Raleigh swam his ass to Amazon Lily. And basically he's like, hey, so blah, 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 blah. He basically goes like, hey, Luffy, I can't stop you, but think about how bad y'all got your ass kicked. If you keep going right now, that's probably going to happen again. So maybe hold off a little bit. Because Raleigh's like, I genuinely like this kid. I like his vibe. I want him to have an actual chance at getting things done. He can't do it right now. So then, when the Navy had sort of dispersed its forces again, Jinbei, Raleigh, and Luffy go back to Marineford, storm the, courtyard, and ring a bell. They ring a bell that is normally rang at, a New Year thing for the world government. It's rang 8 times normally. Luffy rings it 16 times. And makes sure that people with, news reporting stuff are there. And basically, it's to hope that the rest of the Straw Hats get the newspaper, see that they mentioned 16 times, and then reverse engineer that means in 2 years. Now, first things first, I'm the illest. First of all, the assumption that the newspaper is going to include the 16 times, that's big. That's a big assumption. Second, the idea that everybody knows what that means, that's also a big assumption. Delightfully, they mention one of his crew is an idiot. Zoro.
Yeah.
And Zoro, when we cut to him, everybody else was like, all right, I get it. Zoro's like, all right, this means something. I don't know what, but this means something.
That's why I like him.
We also cut to Luffy's cohort going through the new world. Capone gets sucked up by a UFO thing. We get Sanji interacting with Ivankov, which is fine, but yeah, no. This panel of Frankie having blown his face off. God, I love Frankie. Brook is upsetting still, but whatever. Brook's introducing us to the Long Arm tribe. The land that he is in is being ransacked by Long Arm tribe bandits. So all in all, Marineford, very cool. A lot of very fun, powerful moments. Whitebeard does a lot of cool shit, and you really feel the scale. We shit on the paneling. I shit on the paneling. And talked about how it undermined things because it does, but that's only because the rest of the war, seeing the subdivision commanders going, seeing everybody desperately giving it their all to go after Ace, it is very cool, and the power level is through the roof.
Dude, we didn't even talk about that scene where Whitebeard is just furious about Ace's death, and he just smashes Akainu into the ground. Yeah, that scene in the anime is pretty dope, just because of the warping effect of Whitebeard's devil fruit. The fact that Akainu survived that is kind of just absurd.
Wild. Well, what I actually, it's you feel Whitebeard's power in that moment, and what's really cool is, since this is the tremor fruit, he creates tremors and cracks and things, and we just cut to various people throughout the war. We cut to people in various parts of the world watching it on TV, and when Whitebeard starts doing shit, there are earthquakes globally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they specifically say that like his devil fruit has the ability to just like destroy islands, basically.
Yeah, and he does. He cracks Marineford in half so that his crew doesn't come and try to like help him out when he knows that he's dying. He dies on his feet. They list like an enormous amount of like stabs and bullets. He gets half of his face punched off, like skull and all.
Yeah,
like,
and he's still
like his face from the right side. Like, take his nose and then choose a half. Not there anymore. He keeps going. But they mentioned how he never suffered even one coward's wound. No wounds to his back. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. This is the first time that like I haven't. This is the first time that I like a like an arc, not because I love a character. I like Ace, but I don't like this arc because of Ace. I loved Water 7, but that's because Frankie is God's perfect child. So Frankie buoyed Water 7 pretty hard. This is like the first arc that like gets by on its own merits. IMO.
I mean, I feel like that's kind of a hot take.
I think that's only a hot take amongst One Piece fans.
I mean, probably. Yeah, fair.
Because the rest of the arcs just sort of fall so flat because they are so generic, or they just don't feel like they matter. But this is the first one where like characters care about each other and characters' motivations feel true, and actual stakes with actual difficulties happen. Like, oh. And one thing that I was going to talk about, we were talking about power scaling earlier, and I think I've said this earlier, like in one of the first episodes on Mike. One of the things that I really like about One Piece is that we don't randomly get power-ups, right? Like, we're not picking up Super Saiyan, we're not picking up Super Saiyan 2, we're not picking up Super Saiyan 2.5 Electric Boogaloo, right? Like, we're just where these characters are at, and they're fighting progressively more difficult fights. Like, Zoro's a really good example of this. We don't really know where Zoro's strength is at the start of the series, because we run into him starving and sleep deprived, having been tied to a post for 3 days, and then we see him get gimped by Mihawk. No, by a sneak attack. And so he's fighting through a wound for like the next 8 fights that we see. And then he gets wounded by Mihawk. And so for most of the East Blue, he's in recovery.
Wait, what was the sneak attack that took him out?
Buggy, like, hand knifes him in the back, in the spleen.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah. And so that's why he's like bleeding while he's carrying Luffy's
crate. Oh, yeah. Damn.
Yeah, bro.
That wasn't even in the live action.
No, not even
How did you remember that?
Because I love Buggy, dude. My Buggy boy.
Like, even I forgot about that shit.
Yeah, because you don't love Buggy like I do. You do love Zoro, so I am surprised. Yeah. But Zoro has so much more stuff to remember than Buggy does. Anyway, like, most of what we see of Zoro in the entirety of the East Blue, he's in recovery. And so, no, he's not getting stronger. He's getting back to his baseline. And up to this point, with the exception of the gears, because they're stupid, and nobody really gets like a big power up. They're training, they're getting incrementally better because they're fighting incrementally harder fights. But there is no big hand-waving feeling thing, with the exception of Gear 2 and Zoro just having 3 heads for a moment, for reasons. Those notwithstanding, everything feels like it's a good narrative power-wise. Which is why I'm excited for the time skip. Because I like having a reason for people to get stronger. I think Oda kind of wrote himself into the like, all right, I need to jump up a level. And rather than having these characters magically be at this level, I do respect the, all right, they're taking a timeout to reach the point where they can rise to this challenge.
Yeah.
I like that. I do think that's pretty good. I'm excited to hate whatever comes next. Because whatever happens next, it's going to be disappointing comparably.
Yeah, I feel like you're not going to like the rest of One Piece.
Who knows? Maybe I'll feel differently about Kaido than you do.
Maybe. It's going to be a sec. Because I don't even have those volumes.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah, I'm almost at the point where I'm done with
I think I have up to 70 volumes.
Yeah, and I've got like most of 60s.
Or maybe it's like...
I think you're... Yeah, I think you've got like
No,
through 80.
I think up to like 80.
Yeah. So...
Like that, but...
Oh, God.
You're so close.
Are you almost current?
How
many volumes
on
are
the
there?
volumes?
Yeah.
Oh no, there's 105 or 106 in English now.
Okay.
So like there should be a box set coming out again soon.
Man.
So hopefully in the next year I'll have another box set.
Hell yeah. It is a weird feeling to almost be caught up.
I mean, granted, you did start from Skypiea.
That's
so
true.
like you didn't have to read all of the other shit.
Man,
like you didn't have to
Blue.
read through it. I mean, maybe you would want to read through Alabasta because you haven't read the Alabasta manga, but
I mean, we could loop back around.
just get to like
when I get caught
get
up.
to like the end of my volumes, and then we'll be like, actually, okay, now we're talking about the beginning of the series.
Yeah, possible.
Anyway,
I gotta pee and get water.
Yeah, I also need to. So
goodbye. I called dibs.